Julia Wilkes.
I'm Kate Rabel.
I'm Brooke Wilkes.
And this is our summary for Justice for All, Realities and Possibilities of Black English Learners in K-12 Schools by Ayanna Cooper. So basically, the overall message of this article is it's about these Black English language learners in the K-12 school system and just how their experiences in this education system are just completely layered marginalization because of so many different factors. They've got their race, their backgrounds, their immigration status, their language needs, all these things that just all marginalize them a little bit. And so it's just definitely a difficult transition and experience in this education system. But this article points out that this education is a civil right. We need to give it to them, and to do that, to ensure this equity among this population in the school systems, we need to be intentional, we need to be critical, we need to be culturally responsive to these students and to all of our students, but be specifically aware of these students. And also emphasizes that these language learners just are not adequately represented in educational discourse, kind of, and research and all these kind of things. So that definitely needs to be improved upon. And it brings in the critical race theory, but also it just kind of gives a call for teachers to just increase, these educator awareness of these students and the knowledge of their backgrounds, their family lifestyles, all these kind of things. It calls for teachers to be advocates for these students and also just kind of a justice-oriented pedagogy in the classroom, and have these teachers just be, fighting for the rights and treating their students in the right way.
Mm-hmm. Like Julia said, it does touch on critical race theory and kind of breaks that down to explain all the layers that these students really are experiencing within their culture, language, everything that goes into it. Something that the article talked about that I thought was interesting is that, it said that these students are at risk for bullying, but they have, like Julie said, the right to be educated, but also there's a there are laws that protect them from this type of bullying that they are experiencing, this type of discrimination. Something that was really interesting to me was the stories about the children in elementary school, especially the child, her name's Blessing, and she was affected by a natural disaster. She wasn't harmed, but emotionally she was affected, and it gave examples of her teacher being just not very kind to her and saying that you should have learned these things last year, and just not there. It talked about how teachers just really can use better strategies to help these students feel included and feel loved in these environments, and just how they're very misunderstood as well.
Yeah, something that stood out to me from the article was was how it talked about how students who are Black immigrants, when they move to the U.S., they find that they experience becoming Black in the U.S. because it means different things, and also that they have a different culture. You can't assume that somebody from Haiti has the same culture that somebody who is an African American and raised in the U.S. is going to have. I thought that was really interesting that we make assumptions and assign characteristics based on our experience. And I thought I was like, wow, that is super unfair. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it just talks about also dispelling myths that all Black students have the same experience. And I think it's making the point that we need to see our students as individuals and figure out what their individual stories are, because that's what seeing our students is.
This is our praxis. Knowledge is power, and I think there's a lot of power that comes from knowing your students and knowing their families and knowing their backgrounds. So, as a future teacher, we've talked about this in class, but I really just it solidified my opinion on this, reading this article, that, connecting with these families is very important, and I think something that would help that be possible in my own classroom is just making those family visits and make sure that I'm visiting these families of these students that come from different backgrounds, language needs, and immigration status and things like that. But making visits to them and understanding what their home life is like as well as what they're like at school.
Mm-hmm. Something that the article mentioned was that the teachers that they were learning these stories about, just lacked like culturally responsive and appropriate strategies to help their students. And it talked about how being an empathetic teacher isn't enough. You really, like Julia said, really have to know your students and know good strategies to be able to help them feel included and loved. And I just want to be able to learn these strategies to help my students feel the most comfort that they can and love in the classroom. And yeah.
One thing that I think I'm going to do in my future classroom after reading this article is I was really struck by the story of the girl from Haiti that was already mentioned, and her teacher said, you should have already learned this. And I think one thing I'm going to do in my classroom is I want to eliminate the phrase, you should already know this, because that's really uncompassionate to these students to be like, oh, well, you're dumb because you don't already know this. But I do think that there are some things that I can assume that they know, but I'm not going to make a class-wide announcement or even like a one-on-one statement to one student where I tell them that they should already know something. I'm just going to help them from where they're at, and I'm not going to make them feel demeaned or belittled because they have like extenuating circumstances that prevented them from receiving that same knowledge.
Yeah. And this is our reflection. One thing I did agree with in this article is that, yes, teachers and schools can do better for these students. They are underrepresented. There's more we can do. But I do think that while a recommendation to be better is great, there was no specifics really on what to do better. I mean, for these schools that come from low tax income kind of a thing where they don't have a lot of, what's the word I'm trying to say? Resources. I mean, there's only so much that they can do, and I think these articles could, instead of just calling attention to the fact that it needs to be better, maybe give some specific recommendations on what they could do to be better.
I was gonna say something very, very similar. I just like I was saying in my praxis, I want to be able to know strategies to not just be an empathetic teacher, but to really know what to do to be able to help my students. And I feel like if I am able to learn these things, I'm going to be a better teacher, a better educator, and better at helping my students feel included and loved. And so I just think the article probably could have given more examples as well.
Yeah, I think that was probably my biggest thing as well, is like, I think a call to action is great, but I think it sticks with you a lot longer if you know what you can do afterwards. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.